Hi, everyone. We'll get started shortly. We'll give it just one more minute for people to join. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Lauren, and welcome to our California Rapid DNA webinar hosted by GTH DNA and our learning platform Go Rapid DNA. And a big thank you to all of our speakers and attendees today. And we are very enthusiastic about the future of Rapid DNA in California. And today's agenda will be very beneficial for the California law enforcement agencies and crime labs considering Rapid DNA programs. Over the last 30 years, traditional DNA testing has revolutionized how crimes are investigated and prosecuted. The incredible success of DNA has created more demand than most state and local labs have the resources to deal with. And as a result, backlogs and processing times expand, and limits are put on the types of evidence allowed to be submitted, such as property crime evidence. And law enforcement in the United States and throughout the world are recognizing that rapid DNA is an impressive tool that could bring crime labs some relief on cases suitable for rapid DNA testing, providing police instant results when time matters. Success stories from around the country highlight rapid DNA's impact. One of our law enforcement speakers will present how his rapid DNA program routinely identifies suspects and exonerating others. And he will further explain how his program has achieved impressive results even without access to CODIS databases. However, it is clear that most robust and successful rapid DNA programs are those that have access to criminal offender DNA databases. You will hear from other speakers that will explain how law enforcement agencies could have access to CODIS databases for evidence tested on rapid DNA in the next 12 to 18 months. Rapid DNA can be operated in the police department by law enforcement officers rather than in the crime laboratory. But one common theme you'll hear today is that the best rapid DNA programs are those that are established in close coordination and partnership with your crime laboratory. We are fortunate to have the former New York State Lab Director as one of our speakers today, and I'm sure he will reinforce this message. We have 6 distinguished speakers that will be covering the advancements of rapid DNA in the United States and specifically here in California. And the format for today's webinar is that we will hear from our 6 presenters whose presentations last approximately 10 to 15 minutes each, and we will then have about 15 minutes to address questions from the audience before the webinar ends at 11:30. And you can submit a question at any time during the webinar. We will do our best to address your questions, and if we don't have time to address your question during the webinar, we will work with the speakers panel to follow up with your question later this week. And to submit a question, please post it in the Q&A box and not the chat box. Your question will be sent directly to the webinar organizers and will not be visible to the attendees. For attendees eligible to receive continuing education credits for today's event, GTH-DNA will be providing attendance certificates. And near the end of the webinar, I will share a form in the Q&A where you can indicate your interest in receiving a certificate and answer a few additional questions about whether or not you'd like to receive more information on Rapid DNA post-webinar. Please enjoy today's event. Our first presenter is Lisa Hurst. Lisa is the Director of North America for GTH DNA, where she has worked for over 25 years on forensic DNA public policy and legislation. Lisa will give us an overview of Rapid DNA, a forensic DNA policy review, and federal funding opportunities related specifically to California. Over to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lauren. So I'm just going to try to sort of set sort of an overview of what's been going on with Rapid and get everyone on the same page. So just to start off, what is Rapid? So if anyone doesn't know yet, isn't familiar with Rapid, Rapid is a process that processes DNA samples in 90 minutes. It's designed primarily with the end user being a non-laboratory law enforcement personnel with minimal training. And by minimal training, we mean not the in-depth DNA analyst training, just really some more minimal training on how the instrument operates. It is the same scientific analysis methods that's used in crime laboratories. And it's a self-contained desktop-sized instrument. You'll get a demo in a little bit of what this looks like to give you a better idea, but it really can just fit right on your desktop. The really valuable thing about Rapid, though, here is that you can start to act on investigative leads within hours. I mean, think about it. You've gone to a crime scene, collected the sample. Within potentially 90 minutes, you could have an investigative lead on that crime that you're investigating, whether it's a homicide or a burglary crime, especially, of course, the property crimes frequently do not get processed as quickly at our crime labs around the entire United States. So really changing the way that law enforcement operates with DNA. It allows for timely identification, but also really timely exonerations of potential suspects. So a few knots of Rapid DNA. Rapid DNA is not a replacement for traditional lab-based DNA analysis. Rapid is, again, uses the same processes, can get a good DNA profile, but it's not advised for complex casework, mixtures, not for degraded samples, not for the really low-level touch DNA samples. Rapid, and we get this question a lot, Rapid has not yet been challenged for admissibility in court. One of the reasons that this admissibility hearing hasn't happened as of yet primarily has to do with the A swab, B swab use, which is what the sort of national scientific working groups have recommended. So you take an A swab and a B swab, ideally from the same crime stain. The A swab, your best swab, will always go straight to the crime laboratory. It will go to the lab or potentially your evidence room, maybe to the lab later, but it will get in that longer, slower line for crime lab analysis. The B swab then is your presumptive lead. That's the one, again, from the same crime stain that you would use in the Rapid instrument for that quick 90-minute lead. So one for Rapid, one for traditional analysis. By the time you've got your suspect and things are ready for court, the other sample will have gone through traditional lab analysis, and then that's the one that can be used in court. Eventually, we do suspect that the defense bar is going to challenge Rapid. Rapid has been used in court. It has been introduced in court. It just has not been challenged at this time for admissibility hearings. And we always recommend that the best local law enforcement use of Rapid DNA programs, the best use are those that are developed and coordinated in coordination, in conjunction with your local or state crime laboratory. Or if you are in an area where the local or state crime laboratory is not yet ready to support RAPID, there are a number of jurisdictions around the country that use the private, accredited private DNA crime laboratories instead. So these would be the same laboratories that you outsource cases to. So there's two types of use cases for rapid DNA. We'll talk a little bit about arrestee identification first. So this is enrollment at booking stations. When you have a state that has an arrestee law, which California does, and if you can collect and process that sample while at the booking station, while that person is still in custody, the booking station enrollment process offers a lot of great advantages. Again, it's while the person is still in custody. It's before they've been released. It prevents dangerous offenders who maybe came in on a low-level felony, but really could be linked to a homicide or a rape. It prevents them from being released. It closes loopholes and other missed samples. So we know that at jurisdictions throughout the country, states have identified literally tens of thousands of arrestee DNA or other offender samples that just get missed. They don't get collected when they're supposed to get collected. RAPID integrates with the fingerprint booking station process, which really closes down that opportunity for a booking deputy to forget to get a sample. It sort of encourages that collection to happen. It also then avoids dangerous situations. So this guy in your custody who's done something else bad, he knows what he's done, or she knows what she's done. And when that match happens 2 months, 3 months, 6 months later, your officers are going to have to now get another search warrant or arrest warrant to go out and serve that arrest warrant on this person who, again, knows what they've done. So if you can still get that match while they're sitting in custody, it just really cuts down on these situations. It's a great program. Louisiana was the first state to begin implementing arrestee DNA booking stations. Florida is currently in the process of rolling out about 10 sites across the state right now, most of them having come online this year. And in development, we've got another 4 or 5 states plus the FBI who are actively building some of the underlying information technology that will allow them to also deploy rapid DNA testing at booking stations. There are a few hurdles, and I'm happy to say that California meets a lot of these hurdles. So in order to be eligible to participate in this booking station enrollment program, you have to have appropriate statutes and regulations. An FBI requirement for the program is that you must have a statute that allows you to collect rapid DNA during that booking process, during that fingerprinting process. California's law allows for that. The FBI also requires that you must be legally allowed to use rapid DNA at the booking stations for analysis. So this can be tricky. A lot of state statutes never envisioned rapid DNA, and so sometimes your state statutes may say, and the sample shall be sent to the lab for analysis. But then a lot of labs are kind of starting to opine that, well, if it's a booking station environment and I've approved all of the processes that are going on there, then maybe that rapid DNA is a piece of my crime lab in a box at your booking station. So maybe you don't have to change the statute. Maybe there are some definitions that can be done through regulation instead to allow that to happen, especially for a state like California, where the DNA database probably would not be treated very friendly at the state legislature. And then FBI requirements also do require that in order to participate, you have to have all of these requisite IT infrastructure upgrades. This is not a small thing. These are upgrades to your ABIS systems. Even once that state centralized system is done, there are some local upgrades that also have to happen. This is a heavier lift and can be a bit of an expensive lift, takes some time. But again, Louisiana was the first, and actually East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Office was the first local agency with a rapid enrollment program. Some of their first hits, just again proving that this works, their first hits, they had some cross-state hits, cross-border hits, one with Georgia on a carjacking case. They had hits on everything from homicides to attempted rapes to attempted murder of a police officer. And of course, where we see a lot of use with rapid is just on the burglaries. So it does work. Rapid DNA, the other use scenario is evidence application. So the most common comparison is a one-to-one comparison in rapid. This again, from a known suspect to a new crime scene stain, just one-to-one, you're not using a database, get that lead in 90 minutes. And get that investigation going. This is moving DNA to the front end of investigations. It can really help your investigations, reduce other allegations of bias, other community confrontations when you've collected DNA, but it's going to take your crime lab several months to get to your case. It can get this quick identification, inclusion, exclusion information for your investigations. A lot of local jurisdictions are using Rapid for that one-to-one. Another use is the local databases. So this is one to sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands. You'll hear a little bit later from Bucks County, and the sheriff who started the Bensalem project. This is local agencies creating their own DNA database profiles from crime scenes, suspects, other volunteers. We see this a lot where we have states where they don't have arrestee laws and where that state index is not as valuable of a product. I do want to note that in California, it's a little bit of a give and take. There are some limitations around local DNA databases, and especially something kind of new that came along a few years, within the last 2 years or so. So the give is there are some really clear protections to ensure that law enforcement has authority to utilize DNA and to use their own DNA databases as they need to. However, you guys may remember a few years ago, there was a case involving a victim who was checked against a database of unsolved crimes. It's a lot deeper than that and very convoluted story. But the resulting legislation that came out of that says that not only can a victim of a crime not be searched against the forensic unknown database, but they also don't want anyone who has voluntarily provided a sample for the purpose of exclusion. So this is really important. A lot of voluntary samples, it might be difficult. You're going to really need to pay attention to the wording around any voluntary consent forms. A lot of samples may be given for exclusion. If that's the case, they can only be checked against that crime for which they were being investigated in the first place. They cannot be databased. So for the purpose of exclusion is an important caveat, but that does not mean, so you've got like Orange County, for example, that has the requirement to provide samples as part of plea agreements. That's not for the purpose of exclusion. That's a fine thing to keep on your database. There could be other instances. Just pay attention, speak with your legal counsel and prosecutors about what they think you can do in your jurisdiction. Then there's also the state databases. We have a lot of states that are moving forward to allow matches against their state-based DNA database. So this is not the national DNA database, but just those offender samples that are collected under their own state statutes. These types of systems are operational in several states: Arizona, Connecticut, Missouri, Kentucky, Oklahoma just came online this week, I believe. Louisiana has a pilot project underway, and Pennsylvania is actually preparing to put up, I believe it's like 12 to 15 rapid instruments around the state. That'll wind up becoming the biggest statewide rapid program so far. California, if the California Department of Justice Crime Laboratory and other legal counterparts believe that this is something doable, you do have a big DNA database in California. Of course, the biggest in the country by far, 3 million samples that can be searched. It's a very valuable tool. But a lot of states are looking down the road to the even bigger prize, which is CODIS. Great that California has 3 million samples, but CODIS has 23 million samples that you can search. Right now, evidence cannot be searched if it's been processed with RAPID. Evidence cannot be searched against CODIS, but we've got change coming in 2025. So pay attention. Some of our speakers later on are going to speak to this, specifically the FBI representative. I do recommend listening to what he's talking about and starting in with some working groups. Talking about funding. This is going to cost some money to get it set up, but it's going to be a very valuable tool. So, and then just quickly again, as I mentioned, we do have rapid DNA throughout the entire country. Just a few states actually now are not collecting DNA, or I'm sorry, using rapid DNA in their investigations. And federal earmarks, I just wanted to point out that we have a lot of states that have been active with the federal earmark process, a lot of local jurisdictions, I'm sorry, I should say. So all of these dots are various earmarks from the last 4 years. The blue ones are pending in the current project spending bill, but that should get approved probably by the end of the year. So this has been a great resource for rapid DNA. Congress has really been attracted to funding these projects, and it's been a great way to get some of that seed money to get a project going with rapid. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. Our next presenter is Robert O'Brien. Robert works at the Global Forensic Justice Center at the Florida International University. Robert will provide a technical overview, including a short demonstration on how the rapid DNA system works. Thanks for joining us, Robert. Over to you.
Yes, hi. Let me get my presentation. Okay, just to check, are you all seeing the presentation at the full screen? I'm sorry.
No, not yet. You'll want to hit that from beginning button.
Right. Sorry, it's not. Do I do resume slideshow? It's the only option it's giving me.
Try that. Are you not able to hit the from beginning button?
I'm hitting it. I'm sorry. I apologize. Let me try this one more time.
There it is.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yes, I'm Robert O'Brien from the Global Forensic and Justice Center. We are a preeminent center of FIU, Florida International University. We've been involved in rapid DNA for over 10 years now with both instruments and even the precursors to the instruments that are currently on the market. So just going over basically some of the things that may have been set up before, talking about rapid DNA. So what is rapid DNA? So rapid DNA is a system that is currently designed to collect and process samples in 90 minutes. You're compressing a standard DNA workflow into easy use and a mobile process. So this is something that can be taken to a scene, whether it is a crime scene, mass disaster situation, or to the border, things like that. Designed to be operated by non-technical users. So that was one of the requirements for Rapid DNA. The idea was not to deploy laboratory personnel to run these devices. And they have minimal hands-on time when you're actually running the instrument. It's sample in, the instrument does the work, and then it's answer out. So it's really a three-step process. Your sample is placed into a cartridge, and the cartridge is inserted into the instrument. That, and then entering any information as to the name of the sample, any information, that should be all your hands-on time. Then you let the instrument do its thing. It takes about 90 minutes, at the end of which you're going to get DNA results. Both instruments currently in the market are producing the same confirmatory result that you will get off of the laboratory. So it is directly comparable to any data. And if you do get a match, it is going to be a definitive match. It's not considered presumptive. The two main instruments on the market right now are shown here. You've got on the left, you have the Rapid ID. On the right, you've got the Andy. They are some differences. They both produce all 20 core CODIS loci plus some additional loci. Some produce one does one sample at a time. The other one does multiple samples at a time. So really what best fits your workflow and the needs of your organization. Both systems do have two different types of cartridges. You've got your reference cartridge, which is going to be primarily used for your buccal swabs. So any type of reference sample. They can also be used usually for high blood level samples. So if you do have a blood as a reference, they will work for that. And then both systems have a low level cartridge. This is going to be used also for blood, but more your lower levels of blood. You could use bone, tissue, saliva if you're collecting from soda cans, drinking bottles. Even a single strand of plucked hair can be used, or if you're going to be doing things like looking for wear of the item off of clothing. And if you see some of the diagrams, we have stuff like we've done chewing gums, cigarette butts, all these different things we've processed, and they work great with a Rapid DNA device. So like I said before, sampling, you place a sample in the cartridge. Usually it's in the form of a swab, but things like gum and cigarette butts, you can actually place those directly into the cartridge, or even cuttings of cloth, you can place directly into the cartridge. That usually takes about maybe 5 minutes to get done. Once you put on the instrument, it's 90 minutes, and then you're going to have your DNA profile at the end. And like I said, that's going to include the 20 core CODIS loci from the FBI and some additional markers. For the user, that is going to give them some general information, like you're going to get a green check mark. A green check mark will usually mean you have a full DNA profile and no reviews required. So, you know, at the booking stations, they typically need a green check mark for it to go directly up for comparison purposes. A yellow check mark usually means that the sample should be looked at. It needs to be reviewed by typically a DNA analyst or someone with training in data interpretation, so that they can look at the data, because a yellow could be anything from a near perfect profile, which is just missing a marker or two, a profile that has really not many markers at all, maybe just one or two, which probably you won't be able to do anything with, or it can even be a mixture where you have DNA from more than one individual on the profile. All those will get checked yellows. Then the last one, not seen too often, but it can occur, is a red. If you see a red, that usually is not sample dependent. It usually is based on perhaps an instrument issue or maybe a reagent issue, something going on with the cartridge. But typically a red is not sample dependent. So your matching and technical reachback support, this becomes important. So like I said before, green, I've got a full DNA profile. The Rapid software, both systems have where you can actually do matching on the software itself. And of course, there are other databases you can use for matching. But if you get a full DNA profile, you can go ahead and let that be matched. If you have a yellow, you should be reaching back for technical support by a trained DNA analyst. Some small agencies I know are training people in their agency how to at least look at data and make preliminary determinations on a yellow based on whether they think it's going to be uploadable or it's actually going to be a sample they're going to have to rerun, or perhaps sample the item of evidence in a different location. Typically with your reference samples, I would say over 90% of the time, you're getting your green check marks. The only time you start to see yellows is when you're doing your evidentiary type samples, your non-reference samples. So rapid DNA sample guide. So if you are going to be running this for non-reference samples, you should be doing a validation, like how you'd validate any piece of DNA equipment as to the type of samples, how low level you're going to test, and the different bodily fluids that you'll be looking at when you're running for DNA. You can do, there's two methods. There's the A swab, B swab method and the bouquet swab method. So the A swab, B swab is A first. That goes to your laboratory for processing. Your B goes onto your instrument for your investigative leads. Or the bouquet method is where you try to attempt to take 2 swabs at a time of the stain. Of course, that's going to be dependent on the size of your stain, if you can actually take 2 swabs at a time. And then one thing, if you're going to be getting a rapid device, you should be looking to the companies to provide you with a field guide so that you can actually show you how to process more difficult samples, whether it's things like bones, cigarette butts, chewing gum, things that you may not be able to just simply swab and place the swab into the instrument. So I would, if you are purchasing a unit or looking into moving it from maybe references to evidentiary type samples, you should probably go speak to your whoever's selling you the unit to make sure they're providing you with a guide on how to work other types of samples. And that's the end of my presentation. If there's my contact info, if you have any questions about rapid DNA or any questions about trainings or validations. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Our next presenter is Sheriff Fred Herron. Sheriff Herron is currently the Sheriff of Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and before being elected sheriff, he was an earlier pioneer of using rapid DNA when he was the police chief of the Bensalem Township, and will give an example of how law enforcement is advancing rapid DNA. Over to you, Sheriff.
Thank you. Let me see. Give me 1 second. Do you see what you're supposed to see?
Yes, you'll just want to go up to the display settings and change the settings so that it goes to the widescreen.
How's that?
There we go. Looking good.
Okay. Fantastic. Good afternoon. I guess good morning for those in California. My name is Fred Herron, as Lauren would say. I'm the sheriff of Bucks County. I'll tell you a little bit about us in a second. And prior to that, I was the police chief in Bensalem when we started this program. So let's just get into it because we don't have a lot of time. Normally, I do this presentation a little longer, in about an hour, hour and a half, but you're going to get the condensed version. So if you don't know where we are, or maybe you do from recent events, Bucks County is in the southeast corner of Pennsylvania, and we border the city of Philadelphia. That was there because I was hoping when we first started this back in 2017 with Rapid that all of America would start using Rapid, and we're getting there slowly. So that's some good news. A little bit about Bucks County. Bucks County is long. It's shaped like Italy. It's about an hour and 20 minutes north to south. It's about 25 minutes east to west. I can be at the Verrazano Bridge in Brooklyn, New York from my house before I could be on the northern end of this county. So just to give you an idea how big the county is, and that's one of the reasons why we're using Rapid, and we just got 2 more instruments. So now we have 3 in the county. Our population is just over 600,000, about 1.4 million during the daytime. We border Philadelphia, which is problematic for us. Trenton and Allentown, and again, we're about an hour and 10 minutes outside of New York City. Pennsylvania is a Commonwealth. There's a lot of police departments in Pennsylvania, just about 1,200 throughout the entire Commonwealth. But in our county, we have 39 police departments that operate individually from one another. They answer to their own local government, and they make up their own rules and procedures. Obviously, they have to be in accordance with state rules, but everybody kind of acts independently, and that's kind of important because we came together some years ago because we realized the value of DNA and rapid DNA. We have just over 900 sworn officers in our county. So what rapid DNA application did we decide to go with? So rapid at booking stations, this is not an option for us. We're one of, I believe, 19 states still that does not have arrestee legislation. So here in Pennsylvania, we do not take DNA by law at time of arrest. We do it consensually, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. So we ask people for their DNA, and we have a pretty much about a 93, 94% of the folks give us their DNA free and clear. And I have theories on why they do that, but they're doing it. So that's a good thing. So we're working on legislation. It has not passed again. We introduced it this year, but did not take. Crime scene for us, that's what we utilize. Crime scene to suspect is the most simple form of the use of the DNA application through Rapid. And we're getting some solid approaches, some solid results rather. Casework against state offender database at this time. The PA State Police, they are now establishing or going to be establishing a state-only non-CODIS database. We have a database, a local database as well, outside of CODIS because we don't have direct access because we're not an arrestee state. And our state lab is overworked. There's only one lab. There's three in Pennsylvania, but one is assigned to Philadelphia, one is to Allegheny, which is Pittsburgh, and then the other state lab is for the other just under 1,200 police departments. So that's a lot of work for one laboratory. But the PA State Police, they are moving forward with this outside of CODIS database. I'm hoping, and the FBI has been amazing. I sit on a couple of committees, and we have really come such a long way. But they see, the need for people to get results quicker and need access to the database. So they're moving in good steps, and I am hopeful and confident that PA will eventually get access to that database as well when our laws catch up to it. Local reference sample database, that's what we're doing here. Person to crime scene, because we don't have direct access to the national database at this time, but I'm hoping that's going to change. So let me just give you a little bit of history of how we got to where we were. In 2010, an idea was born for us that I really never considered, to look at a non-CODIS database, and we did. So now we've got about 60 to 70,000 samples in that database, just in this one county. And we started sharing with other counties as well surrounding us. Philadelphia, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, and Montgomery County, and now Chester County as well. But in March of 2017, we went online with Rapid. We were the first police department in the United States to purchase a Rapid instrument that a Rapid instrument. I just checked my phone because last time I was doing this, I got kicked off and they were texting me that I wasn't even on. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't talking to myself. We got a Rapid instrument in 2017, and we became the first police department to operate Rapid 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And we've seen some amazing results, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Montgomery County, which is also borders Philadelphia, they went online with Rapid in September of 2017. I believe Chester County came on board this year as well. And in February of 21, just when we were getting into COVID, we actually joined forces with Philadelphia and created a regional database using a local database from Philadelphia in a small pond application database to be able to search our reference samples against Philadelphia's forensic samples, which I knew it wasn't going to be a big win for us, but it was going to be for Philadelphia, because we were searching Philadelphia crime scenes with people that were getting arrested here in Bucks County for minor crimes, which would not have been in CODIS at that time. So the focus on our program is that all personnel, this is just not a project or an initiative, it's a way of policing. It's like a community policing. It's a philosophy, not just an initiative that comes and goes. This is the way we do business now since 2010, and then again since 2017. So all personnel were trained in processing crime scenes. We adopted this new philosophy. It's an investigative tool for us. It's not the end all, God all. We don't get a hit and run out and slap handcuffs on somebody. We use it as part of the investigation. And the officers and the investigators, detectives play a big role. Detectives and supervisors are trained in the utilization of the Rapid instrument. Not every officer is trained in this, in actually running the machine, although they could. It's as easy as a microwave to use. And we're getting about 95% recovering DNA on crime scenes. 95% of our crime scenes we're getting DNA from. So I think that's pretty amazing as well. Our collection protocols, as I said, we do get court orders, we do get subpoenas, but most of it is with consent. We have a consent form. We just actually changed it. I did not incorporate it into the presentation. We haven't utilized it yet because the two machines are just going into service now. But we have a new consent form that really outlines to the folks that this is for criminal investigations. This is not, we're not looking to see where you come from in the world. We're not Ancestry.com. We're not Jerry Springer, where we're trying to see if you're the father or not. That's not what we're using it for. We're using it for criminal investigations. We make sure the evidence collection, we get our evidence is triaged. So we want to make sure that we're getting enough of the evidence samples. As I think Lisa said in her presentation, we use the A and B swab method. Obviously, we always save enough. There's always enough DNA for the lab. Lab will always be a priority. The rapid instrument will never take priority over the laboratory. So that is key. This is not a replacement for laboratories. It's just another tool for the laboratory. Training, and more training. We couldn't get enough of that in. Like Pennsylvania, local law enforcement in California is not able to search a state database or a CODIS database for offenders with the casework tested on the rapid machine. Therefore, the cases I'm going to talk about, I'm going to show you results that we utilize the rapid application that is currently available to us. That means the reference sample versus the forensic sample. And for us, the forensic sample is being run at a non-state lab. We partner with a local accredited laboratory based in Lorton, Virginia, and they run our crime scene stuff, put into a database, and then we're utilizing Rapid for the reference samples, large majority of them. We've got dozens and dozens and dozens of cases. I'm just going to highlight a couple of cases to hit a couple of different aspects of the beautifulness of this project and this instrument. So here's a crime, right? Robbery, multiple vehicle theft investigation. In a 6-month period, we suffered an influx of vehicle thefts like everywhere else in the country right now. You know, although there's some crime that's down, vehicle thefts is not down. We're high on vehicle thefts. One of the cases, an elderly woman was robbed of her car at knife point. A suspect was developed, DNA. We did get a search warrant for this individual's DNA. The DNA was entered into the rapid machine. Again, you're getting results now in 90 minutes, where in our case in Pennsylvania, it would have been months and months and months here in Pennsylvania. Not for any fault of the lab, they're just overworked. And the government's not giving enough money to run things the way the experts know they should run it. And then what happened was through the rapid machine, we got multiple hits right away for vehicle thefts and robberies. And the suspect confessed to 6 stolen vehicles and that armed robbery. So this is a great case of crime, right? We're using a crime case. We develop a suspect, still old-fashioned police work, got his DNA, put it into the system, and hit to numerous cases. But it's not just about locking up people. That's, that will be always an important part of our job, but not necessarily the most important part. Most important part is obviously preventing crime, but also we're responsible, both law enforcement and laboratories, to make sure that innocent people don't go to jail. That is also our responsibility. In this particular case, we had an elderly woman stated she was sexually assaulted, seemed very credible. She identified somebody that was a known individual in the area. His girlfriend lived in the same complex that she did. His car was on video camera. He was on video camera. He has prior convictions for sexual assault. She positively identifies him. An arrest is made. No DNA taken at this time. We collect DNA from the crime scene. But something was unusual here. He proclaimed his innocence. And most of the times, or the criminal justice system would be beyond backed up if everybody said it wasn't me, it wasn't me. We know that most criminals confess to the crime once you got them. This guy said, I didn't do it. I've been a bad guy most of my life. I get it, but I did not do this crime. So we wound up doing a reference sample on the rape suspect, and he was excluded from the semen of the victim and a coffee cup that supposedly the doer drank from. The charges, he spent 2 days in jail, by the way. The charges were withdrawn. She wound up accusing 2 other people. They were also excluded as possible suspects. We then find out later that she has mental health. Her family then tells us she's suffering from some mental health conditions. That would have been a nice piece of information to have from the beginning, but we did not get that right away. So again, this guy, if there's no DNA, this guy's going to jail probably forever. But that wasn't the case. Thank God. In July of 2017, now remember the dates here. We just got the instrument, put it into service March of 2017. So this is pretty brand new. No one's really using it in America in a law enforcement capacity in a police department. In July of 2017, we have a quadruple homicide where an individual named Cosmo DiNardo wound up trying to sell marijuana to these 4 kids. You shouldn't be dying. You should not die from buying marijuana or using marijuana. He lures them through the alleged purchase of marijuana. He winds up killing them on his family farm. Sets some of the bodies on fire. Beats some of them with a shovel. One kid is beaten, or body is mutilated with a backhoe, with the back of a backhoe. So it's a really horrendous crime. And we wound up, to make a long story short, a couple of days have gone by. We are taken to the family farm, which is about 25 minutes from my location here in the county, kind of the middle part of the county. And we start finding human remains. And he confesses to the crimes, the bodies that we find. But there's one boy that's missing. He wound up, we find out he's buried about a half mile away on the farm, but we cannot identify who is who. And we wound up using DNA from these boys' toothbrushes and doing buccal swabs of the remains because they cannot be identified because of the burns and the beating. And we identify who is who. And then we find the 4th kid, and we're able to give closure to the parents immediately instead of days that the coroner may have that it would have taken the coroner to figure this out. We're able to figure it out in literally under a couple hours, as in lieu of days or weeks. So what's the price on that? I don't think there is. So I think that's pretty relevant that we're using it. And you're seeing now on the news, you see this more. It was used in Miami in the condo collapse. It's used in other places around the country and around the world for identification purposes as well. So I think people need to keep that in consideration. Again, as I told you earlier, that we're sharing information with the city of Philadelphia, and we're seeing some pretty good results with Philadelphia as well. We're seeing people arrested for small amount of drugs here in Bucks County, hitting the sexual assaults and homicides in Philadelphia. This is amazing. You're going to see in a couple of years from now, you're going to see I predict some, if they keep up with it and we keep expanding this, some dramatic decreases in crime in Philadelphia because you're getting criminals off the street quicker. So some of our statistics here, we have about 26,000 reference, about 30,000 evidence samples, over 10,000 plus hits, 1,700 cross-agency hits, Rapid over 700 hits in Rapid and 310 hits in our regional database, and exclusion and elimination, 26 cases. I don't know, but I think that's a lot. That's a great number. That's 26 eliminations. Could you imagine if 26 innocent people went to jail? That number would be ridiculous in a small county in America. So I think those numbers are pretty significant. Again, we were just expecting property crime in the beginning, but we're seeing violent crimes, narcotics. We're really utilizing this, gun crimes. A lot of DNA. I don't have to tell you. A lot of live people on here. A lot of DNA left at on guns. You saw these numbers already from Lisa. We saw a 42% reduction in burglary. Now, the national average was down at this time, 4.5%. So everybody was like, well, crime's down anyway. Well, yeah, at 4.5% burglary. But we showed a 42% reduction from one municipality and a 25% reduction in burglary and property crime for the whole county. Those are amazing, amazing numbers. Again, this was pretty quick to go through. So that is my contact information. The cell phone and email are the better ways of getting in touch with me. Office phone, not so good. But cell phone, please take it down. Or my email address, please snap it real quick. And I always get a couple of follow-ups for these presentations. I'd love to help you out. Whatever I can do, whatever assistance we can be here in Bucks County. Be more than happy to help you guys out. Thank you for your time and listening. I am going to log off in a little bit, but I'm going to try to log back on if there are questions at the end of the rest of the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff Herron. We are now pleased to welcome Lieutenant Ian Weaver. Lieutenant Weaver is currently assigned to the Investigations Division at the Madera County Sheriff's Office, and he oversees investigations, narcotics, the coroner's office, as well as property and evidence. And Lieutenant Weaver has served 22 years in law enforcement and will share insights on how agencies can leverage federal funding to advance rapid DNA technology with a focus on its application in California. Lieutenant Weaver, over to you.
All right, thank you, Lauren, and good morning, everybody. Again, Ian Weaver, Madera County Sheriff's Office. I'll kind of go over what our intentions are with this program, where we're at in the process, and how we obtain the funds to acquire the technology. So a little bit about what we intend to use this for. Basically, investigative leads. We'll be building our own database. That's our hopes moving forward. And we would like to expand that to other law enforcement agencies in our area, specifically our county. We're going to use this we're going to focus on property crimes, but also obviously use that for any kind of violent crimes we have, homicides, things of that nature, sexual assaults. It'll also be used to identify human remains. Our county is prone to wildfire. Fortunately for us, we have not had a fire like the Camp Fire, where there were multiple fatalities, but it could be used in that incident. Also, vehicle crashes, aircraft crashes, other natural disasters, or decomposed human remains. Our coroner's office could utilize this technology, and like the sheriff was just speaking about, make an identification fairly quickly for the family. A little bit about our county. We're in Central California. We're just north of Fresno. County is about 2,200 square miles. Population is approximately 163,000. Again, Central California, we have a lot of law enforcement agencies in our area. We are a rural county. You know, we have most of our economics is driven off of farming, agricultural, dairies, cattle ranches. And with that, you know, a lot of the agencies that are rural, I'm sure you see the same trends that we see. A lot of our farmers and ranchers are victimized by theft. We have a lot of copper wire theft, which is extremely detrimental to our farmers. These suspects will go in and damage large-scale agricultural wells, pumps, and cause tens of thousands of dollars of damage to strip the copper wire from the pump that leads to the control box, the power source on the ranch. And literally, you know, they can cause $50,000 to $60,000 to get a few $100s in wire. We know from past investigations that a lot of these crimes are committed by the same individuals. Currently, you know, these locations are very rural. There's no typically surveillance cameras. We're talking hundreds or thousands of acres of farmland where these ag pumps are typically located quite a ways off of a main roadway. There's no residences nearby where you're going to have a witness that comes forward that saw something suspicious. And our patrol deputies do a good job. We GPS these locations. We rely very heavily on shoe impressions and tire impressions, but as everybody in law enforcement knows, suspects tend to change vehicles. They tend to change their shoes, but we have been able to link some cases from shoe or tire impressions, but DNA doesn't change. So we're really hopeful and excited to use that technology to link some of these cases and identify these people. So like the sheriff talked about and the other presenters, you know, 90-minute turnaround time, that's extremely beneficial. Currently, we use a DOJ lab that's based out of Fresno, and that lab doesn't just do lab work for us. They're doing lab work for dozens of agencies in the area. So turnaround time for a property crime submission can be multiple weeks or months. So the ability to have results within 90 minutes is something that we're really looking forward to. And again, like the sheriff from Bucks County discussed, it's not the lab's fault. They're limited on the personnel that they have, and they have to prioritize their cases. They're obviously going to focus on violent crimes and sexual assaults first, and the property crimes submissions typically, you know, they take longer to get processed. So we're really looking forward to that. We'll be using the one-to-one method as well. We will still submit one to the DOJ lab in Fresno. As far as our intention, we're going to use Bodhi Technology. We've been in contact with them. Very, very helpful. They're easy to get a hold of. We're in the processes right now of finalizing our contract with them. So we hope to have that done within hopefully the next few weeks or maybe next month. And they will also provide training. We have not done that yet, but once we finalize our contract with Bodhi, they will come on site and do training. We purchased the Rapid machines. Thermo Fisher has been extremely just pleasant to work with. Again, they're a very busy company, but they're always available if I reach out, whether it's by email or phone. They get right back to me. They actually came on site to our sheriff's office last month and did a pretty in-depth training. Took about 6 hours, and we were able to run some samples. Our machines are currently hooked up. We purchased 2. We're going to be moving one to our jail. Currently, both of our machines are online at our coroner's office, but we don't have them completely online because we haven't secured our contract with Bodhi. But again, they're very helpful. One of my employees was off on maternity leave. She just returned back to work today, and Thermo reached out and said, we'll come back up to you and do an in-depth training with her, because she's going to be one of my main employees that's going to be utilizing this technology. As far as the project, it was started initially by our now retired commander, Bill Ward. He started the project early 2023, and he went through the Congressional Community Project Funding, CPF. It's also known as the Congressional Earmark Request. I think the first presenter discussed that. Commander Ward basically submitted a letter on behalf of Sheriff Pogue, and then later he completed the Bureau of Justice Assistance grant application. He worked very closely with our Congressman Jim Costa in Sacramento, and his office was instrumental of working directly with our sheriff's office. And fortunately for us, the grant process took several months, but we were awarded $703,000 in August of 2023. So since then, we have purchased the 2 machines and some associated equipment, refrigerators and things of like that. And specialized tables, we wanted some nice tables for the machines to be placed on, and the refrigerators will be utilized to store our cartridges right next to the machine. But after that, we have approximately $291,000 left in our grant, and those funds will be used to secure our contract with Bodhi, and also to purchase additional, main cartridges, the gel cartridges, and the testing cartridges. And that's kind of where we're at. I know my presentation's quite a bit quicker, but we hope to have this technology fully functional and online by early 2025. We're really just waiting on our contract with Bodhi and a little bit more follow-up training, and that's kind of where we're at and what we plan to do with it.
Thank you, Lieutenant Weaver. Our next presenter today is Doug Harris, who currently serves as the FBI Rapid DNA Implementation Advisor. And before leading the Rapid DNA effort for the FBI laboratory, Doug served as the FBI's custodian for the National DNA Index System and served as a liaison to all CODIS programs throughout the country. Doug will give us an update on the FBI's path for forensic DNA use in CODIS. Over to you, Doug.
Thanks, Lauren.
Our final presenter today is Dr. Ray Wickenheiser. Dr. Wickenheiser is the retired former director for the New York State Police Crime Laboratory System and now works as a forensic consultant for Ray Wickenheiser Forensic Consulting. Ray is a member of the National Technology Validation and Implementation Steering Committee and co-chair of the Rapid DNA Committee. Ray has over 41 years of experience working in the field of forensic science, and Ray will share a laboratory perspective on establishing rapid DNA programs for law enforcement. Ray, over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Lauren. Appreciate the introduction. So rapid DNA, it has incredibly exciting potential. You've heard all about crime scene DNA, and I'm going to really focus on that. And what rapid DNA will be doing, as Dr. Harris had indicated, providing access as early as next year to CODIS. So right now you can have local databases. That one-to-one comparison that has been discussed is fantastic when you have a suspect, but where rapid can really step up is developing a suspect for you. And as you also heard, what we need is forensic laboratory accreditation oversight. So partnering with your crime lab is going to be critically important to bring on this phenomenal tool. So one of the things I wanted to discuss is the entirety of your implementation and what it can do for your state. So as California has experienced, not unlike New York State, you have a series of potential disasters, and what Rapid DNA can really provide is a national or state readiness for when a disaster happens. You really can't crank up a system ahead of time, or excuse me, at the time. You really want to have a system in place in advance. So, for example, the Conception boat fire, where there was approximately 30 victims, Rapid was used there to help identify them. The Camp Fire in Paradise in California, of course, quite a disaster, but Rapid being able to provide not only the mobility, but the assistance in identifying those unidentified human remains, providing closure, and use of family assistance centers. Of course, we had the 9/11 terrorist attack in New York City, Florida, the Surfside condo collapse. And we used Rapid DNA in helping Puerto Rico identify over 750 dead from Hurricane Maria. So it's quite a system to have in place to provide that readiness should something occur. The fact that you can rally the instruments and the personnel and provide that quick response. So what it really assists with is family assistance centers. When you have people right there, and in 90 minutes, you can get a good profile, you can make matches while you have the support people there, as opposed to sending out to the lab, waiting for at least days, perhaps weeks to get those IDs, and then those people have scattered. So it really is a game changer in terms of any kind of an incident. And the idea that I had mentioned of being able to mobilize assistance from to that disaster site from across your entire state or nation, because you're able to work with a single system. So really a tremendous opportunity for a readiness. But in order to use that readiness, you really want to use it on a regular basis. So I'm using a car trip as an example. So if you have a car, you stick it in the garage and you only pull it out every 5 years or a year or two when you actually need it, how well is that car going to work? Okay, so it's not likely not only to work, but will you be ready to use it? Or if you use that car daily, when the road trip comes up, you just pack your suitcases, throw in, away you go. So really what I'm preaching is you want to use your Rapid DNA instruments on a regular basis. The staff, the system will be ready to go. So you accomplish two things. Not only do you get the crime scene opportunity, but you get that statewide readiness, that national readiness. You really get two opportunities in one. So I do want to talk about the forensic lab use case, because we are talking about not only the potential for law enforcement using it out in the field, but as you heard, you really need access to that database to get the larger power, the huge number of known samples of CODIS. You want to get that on your side to really maximize the potential of your samples. So what Rapid can do is really remove the disruption of high priority cases from single source samples. We all know that the crime lab folks are incredibly valuable, incredibly service oriented. The challenge for them is that they are too busy. They're in great demand. Certainly, they can set things aside and they can get a quick response on a single case, but it can be very disruptive. Using Rapid not only helps you to screen samples at the crime scene, focus the efforts in the crime lab, be less disruptive, but also it's going to generate more cases. You can sort the cases, the samples that you have at a messy scene, but also allow for less disruption, which allows your incredibly valuable scientists to focus on the more complicated cases, the mixture cases. They'll still provide samples and access to CODIS, but it allows them to get caught up so they can provide a faster response and work on other priorities. So I really want to talk a little bit to the folks that are perhaps with a legal background or law enforcement. So really, why do you want to put Rapid into place? What's really new here? So to me, this is a good thing. You're using exactly the same STR technology, nothing there. It's tried and true. It's proven. You're using the same CODIS database or aspects of it. So you're using existing infrastructure. You really get to pull on that massive investment of the 23 million samples that you're going to be comparing to. Now, certainly local databases can be great, state databases as well, but ideally you want to access the entirety of that database. So what is really new is the speed. So getting a full profile to me is really a miracle in a box. The fact that in an hour and a half with some review time, in a couple of hours, you're able to get a DNA profile on a lot of investigative items, things that particularly property crimes, people cut themselves breaking in or whatnot. There is a good potential of finding single source DNA. Certainly, you want to split those samples and have a sample to go directly to the lab, that A and B swab that we're talking about. So the fact that you're not jeopardizing the case, so what you're really getting is a win of something new, the quickness of getting that profile and developing an investigative lead or getting that direct one-to-one comparison. The other thing that you get is portability, really a speed, ease of use. And down on the corner, you can see on my slides, I have a red button. It's really the easy button. You think about all of the complexity of what we've had to go through to get a DNA profile. And really for many folks, it's great that you think of the DNA as a black box, but there's a lot of work and a lot of different steps that go into getting you a profile. So just the miracle in a box that you can put the sample in with some basic information, hit a button, and essentially 90 minutes later, you get a good profile, which to me is incredible. And we really want to maximize the use of that tool. So the idea that you can get a fast result with DNA, it is DNA. So for the people that are suspects, when confronted with that early, you get a lot of potential confessions, guilty pleas, and less time at large so that they can commit less crimes. And another piece that we don't reflect on enough is the quick elimination. So you have the wrong suspect. How long should that person sit under suspicion, or worse yet, in jail? How about as little time as possible? What can be as little as 2 hours? So to me, that's an excellent selling point as well. So you've got disaster readiness, you have the crime scene developing suspects, the one-to-one comparisons, and also the quick eliminations. So why is it urgent? Well, time is public safety. How much time should that person be at large? A lot of the folks we deal with, of course, are repeat offenders. You really want to catch them as quick as they can and not leaving them out there to commit new crimes on new victims. Absolutely, we want to eliminate the wrongfully accused as quick as we can, but absolutely, we want to focus the scientists on their higher value. Certainly, we don't want to insult the scientists that they can't do this work. They absolutely can, but their better values on tough mixture cases, testimony, really consulting, doing research, other things that they don't have enough time for because they're very busy. And part of the challenge is certainly they can do these samples in terms of reagents more cheaply, but we really have to cost their labor into that. You add in the labor, and there's certainly a very high cost of labor that is part of the package when you're doing your calculation. So what are the next steps? You absolutely want to work closely with your accredited lab. As we talked about, you have to partner with that lab in order to get that access to CODIS. Recognize that setting up this awesome capability is going to take some time to get the machinery, the IT in place to really work this seamlessly. There is resources and planning that have to take place. So really, we want to focus on what does California want and what do you need? How can you best take advantage of this to provide your state that readiness? It's ready to go. You're getting the investigative leads and the eliminations at the same time. You're getting the maximum value. This is just about here. It is here right now in terms of rapid for small databases, local databases, one-to-one comparison. But the fact that as early as next year, and you've heard it right here from Dr. Harris of the FBI directly, we're talking about next year, this is going to be available to access that big CODIS database. So what we need is some funding, support, and collaboration. And absolutely, we build it and the cases will come. And with that, I thank you for your kind attention. There's my email, there's my phone. If there's anything that I can do to assist using the DNA experience in New York as we were looking to set up the very system that I described to you. So thank you very much for your kind attention. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ray. We now have time to answer some questions. We'll start with this one for Doug. The county ME's office does all IDs of deceased. From a crime laboratory's perspective, is the best use for rapid DNA as a property crime single source identification system?
So that's an interesting question. So I will say that the standards do allow partnerships with corner offices as well for identification purposes. So if you're having those UHRs processed through that partnership, that can happen as well. honestly, there's more than one. There's so many aspects to rapid DNA. We talked about booking. We talked about crime scene. We're talking about identification, mass disaster. There's so many different uses for it. I think the key, from my perspective, and this is my personal perspective, just seeing how much data I've seen on these instruments. Single source works best. You have to have a lot of DNA in that evidence sample to test it. That's really important. It is not for every single case that you send to a lab. Touch samples, like Lisa said, they don't work real good if you're swabbing, steering wheels and such, right? That's not what it's for. Visible blood, tissue samples, things like that, water bottles, chewing gum, those work best. There's a lot of DNA there. Usually they're single source. So there's so many applications, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Doug. Let's see, question for Lieutenant Weaver. Has Madera County Sheriff's Office considered sharing the rapid DNA program and related costs with neighboring PDs? If we paid for the cost to run our samples on our device, could we bring our samples to your department?
I haven't, that may have come up with Commander Ward and Sheriff Pogue. I really wouldn't know. I'd have to discuss that with the sheriff, but I wouldn't say it's an impossible ask. But I can definitely, if somebody wants to email me or forward me their contact information, I can get back on that once we're up and running.
Question for
Hey,
Ray.
Lauren, can I comment on that a little bit?
Sure.
So regional applications, I think, are huge, especially when we're talking about the standards that are coming. If multiple agencies partner together for the use of one device, these do need to be run. Not all units will have cases that need to be run on it every week, right? These need to be run weekly. So, partnerships are great. If you're able to form those partnerships with multiple people, and then that one partnership tries to create a connection with a CODIS laboratory, so that data, that's possible, and I think it's very good. I just wanted to add that on.
Yeah, and I just got a message from our sheriff, and he said yes, that would be a possibility.
Question for Ray. Are other larger states like New York and Texas advancing the FBI plan to allow evidence tested on rapid by local law enforcement to be searched against CODIS database?
The short answer is yes. So in New York State, we had a really good setup where we have a centralized lab, but also 9 forensic investigation units. So our plan was not only to have the core of the units in the lab, but also have regional facilities across the state. So that way we have the flexibility of samples could come in wherever the closest kiosk is or instrument is, as well as taking it to the main lab, depending on whether you need searching or whatnot. So that certainly is our plan, and it was in the process just as I left the lab system.
Okay, question for Rob, and maybe Doug, you could comment on this one too. We have been told not to run sexual assault kits on rapid DNA due to mixtures. Will rapid DNA become more reliable for sexual assault kits and other mixtures in the future?
From our testing, we've done some testing when it comes to semen samples, and I know the companies are working on getting better at mixtures. But for right now, I think, especially if you end up with a low-level mixture, where you may end up with a very a minor, and because the systems are not as sensitive as current lab techniques, it would probably be best to defer to sending those to the laboratory as of right now. Thermo Fisher and then the other companies are always looking to improve the sensitivities of the instruments. So I'm sure in the future that may change. But for right now, because I know in a lot of times you end up with a very low level minor, and that's usually what's important in the case, you don't want to risk losing that by running it necessarily on a rapid system.
And I'll add on a little bit to that. So once you involve sexual assault kits, you involve now more equipment. It's not just swab in, profile out, more equipment, new reagents that have to be quality controlled. It complicates the process amazingly. And what SWGDAM is looking at, and these will come out in the final stages, is if you're going to do something like that with a rapid instrument, it needs to be run by a laboratory technician. All that extra QC and everything that has to be done there, that has to be done by a laboratory technician. So it's not exactly the same as just taking a piece of evidence onto a swab and placing it in the instrument. There's a lot more complexities to it.
Thanks, Doug. This question is for Rob. Is it possible for local databases to agree to share with each other?
I know that has been done in some regions where they set up, I think, sometimes via small ponds where they can share. We have not, I mean, at our facility, we're doing more training, but I have heard of that being done in different regions where they will share, especially if they're all using the same programs. I know small ponds is an example of one where you can actually share the ponds with, so that you could, like a region could kind of like have their own mini CODIS system in a way. But then I also know CODIS is moving into accepting this data soon. So, maybe that will be a moot point soon.
Thank you, Rob. And that wraps up our webinar for today. Thank you to all of our presenters and everyone who joined us today. We really hope this information is helpful as you consider the issues related to advancing rapid DNA in your jurisdiction. Please feel free to reach out to GTH-DNA if you have any questions. We also encourage you to visit www.gorapiddna.com, where you can find additional rapid DNA policy and program information and updates. We are also planning to post today's webinar and most of the presentations on the Go Rapid DNA website if you would like to review it or share it with others in your office. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much.